So we're finally moving into the third target language for this year, which is Spanish. I've learned Spanish for about 2 years at different periods of my life, and the last time I learned Spanish was somewhere around 9 years ago. At that time, I've been learning from the textbook at the level B1, and I basically wouldn't say that I was at a B1 level at all my skills in Spanish at that time. Because I certainly wasn't, and I would say that I was somewhere at a B1 level in terms of my reading skills, and I could basically read through some more complicated texts and still get about 70 or 80% of it. So I think that my reading comprehension level in Spanish was quite good at that time. But in terms of speaking, I wouldn't say that I was above A2 level. Basically, I would say that at that time, about 9 years ago, I was about decent A2 level in terms of speaking, and about B1 level or sometimes even above in terms of reading comprehension and listening comprehension, but with more focus on reading comprehension, which was a lot easier for me than listening comprehension. And that's basically the level that I've been on 9 years ago. But then, unlike with Chinese or Korean, I basically didn't have any contact with Spanish for more than 8 years. And I forgot almost everything. Like, I forgot the grammar, I forgot the vocabulary. My listening skills went from understanding, I don't know, like about 60 or 70% to understanding like 10% or 20% at most. And when I picked up Spanish again, I realized that my listening skills are very bad and my speaking skills are completely non-existing. And if you've met me during these years, the only thing I could tell you in Spanish was "Hola, ¿qué tal? Yo soy Claudia. ¿Y tú? ¿Cómo estás?" And maybe some gracias, muchas gracias. And basically that was all. So basically my Spanish speaking was totally non-existing. And back in 2021, I believe, during pandemic, I picked up on Spanish again. And I started to listen to some podcasts, and I think I've listened it for about a month, and I got better at listening skills in Spanish at that time, and it was somewhere around 2 years ago. But after the month of like quite intensive listening of Spanish, I kind of gave up again on Spanish, and I didn't learn Spanish at all. I didn't watch any content in Spanish. I didn't listen to anything in Spanish. I got busy with life and with other projects, and basically my Spanish went to almost nothing again. But at least I had some contact with Spanish this 2 years ago. And about half a year ago, in the middle of July 2022, I picked up on Spanish again, and I started to listen to the podcasts in Spanish again, and I started to do some drills in drops and so on and so on and so on. And I even went through 1.5 textbook in Spanish from A1 level to somewhere like to the middle of A2 level. But basically then I was too busy with work and I wasn't able to continue. I self-studied Spanish at the time for about 2 months. mostly by listening to podcasts and doing some drops drills, but as I said, I also use some textbooks. My biggest motivations for learning Spanish at that time was that I was going to Dominicana with my friend and I wanted to speak some Spanish at that time. And basically, I was able to speak some very basic Spanish at the time of my stay in Dominicana. And I've been there for like 10 days. And I have some really nice footage from Dominicana. I don't remember if I had a footage of me speaking Spanish at that time with locals and with Mexicans, but if I find this footage, I will definitely share it on this channel. And then I came back from Dominicana somewhere in the first week of October. And I didn't continue with learning Spanish because I didn't have time. I was too busy with life and with work. So I didn't do it. And this year I've decided to learn Spanish again and to do it properly this time. I've started on 9th of January this year and I've kept the record ever since. And I will definitely share about what I've already did and what I will be doing in the future. So basically I will be sharing some videos about my Spanish learning journey, and I hope that we can inspire each other if you are learning Spanish also or learning other languages that I'm learning this year. So when it comes to assessment of my current skills in Spanish, I cannot say that I'm at A2 level right now like I was this 9 years before. But what I can say for now is that I've basically partially regained some of my skills, even surpassed them. And one of the skills that I regained and surpassed is my listening skills. I feel like my listening skills in Spanish are far better than before. Basically, when I'm listening to podcasts designed for Spanish learners around the world, which are definitely slower than the actual, like movies or telenovelas or even YouTube videos. But when I'm listening to this podcast or when I'm watching the videos in Spanish that are meant for a Spanish learning community, I can basically understand about 80%, about 85%, sometimes 90%, sometimes even 100% or close to 100%. So depending on the podcast or the kind of video or the topic, I can basically understand a lot on intermediate level of Spanish, and it makes me really happy. And I feel like I've progressed a lot just with listening. I'm really proud of myself that I started this journey like a month ago again, but I've already progressed so much in terms of the listening skills. And I've not only regained the listening skills from few years back, but I've also surpassed the skills, and I hope that I will keep surpassing these skills and get to a higher level. My main goal for Spanish listening this year will definitely be getting to a C1 level and to be able to understand videos on a variety of topics, and not necessarily meant for Spanish language learners, but meant for real Hispanohablantes. So when it comes to reading, I have to admit that I didn't really do a lot of reading in Spanish within this month, but I finished a very basic textbook in Spanish because I just wanted to get to know the basic Spanish grammar structures again. I finished this book within like 2 weeks, and basically it was like a 300-page book, and I just went through it and read through all the dialogues or texts and the grammar points, and I'm like super confused right now about all this grammar stuff. So for now, I basically decided to take a different approach for learning grammar, and I will tell you in another video. But basically, I haven't done a lot of reading, but I would say that my reading in Spanish is probably somewhere around B1 level, and if not B1, it would be a strong A2 level. And obviously, the goal for this year in terms of reading is to get to C1 level or even surpass it if possible, and to be able to read books in Spanish, which is very important for me. And I hope that I will be able to read at least like 1 or 2 books in Spanish within this year. But I'm thinking more about the Q4 and not really upcoming months. Moving on to speaking in Spanish. So as I said before, I started learning Spanish again in July and then stopped. I couldn't really say anything beside the simple hola, ¿qué tal, and so on and so on. But right now I'm really happy to say that I've really improved on my speaking skills, and I've kind of regained some part of my speaking skills from few years ago, and I would say that I'm somewhere at A1 level in speaking. And I will definitely make a video of me speaking in Spanish soon, and I will post it. So you can definitely check it out if you are interested in learning Spanish or if you are just interested in my personal experience with learning Spanish. And for the last skill, which is writing, honestly, let's admit it, my writing in Spanish is basically non-existing, and I basically didn't do a lot of writing exercises like essays or something before. I've done some few years ago, like 9 years ago. It was such a long time ago, and I also had support of internet. I could do my research. I had a lot of supporting materials that I could use for my writing, and at that time I could basically write somewhere at B1, maybe even B2 level. If I wanted to use some more complicated grammar structures, I would just, like copy the ones that were in the articles that I've read. So I've done it before, but now my Spanish writing skills are basically non-existing. I would also like to get it to a C1 level until the end of this year. For Spanish, I will have to focus a little bit on writing, but I don't really think that I will do it before I reach the B2 level in all the other areas than writing. So I'm thinking more about Q3 or Q4 for Spanish writing practice. And there's one thing I would like to add to my Spanish learning goals, and that is basically that Spanish is and will be my main focus language for whole this year. So basically, no matter what, I will be studying Spanish all over the year, and most possibly I would like to have a constant contact with Spanish, like every single day, like even doing some short vocab drills or listening to some podcast or video. Basically, Spanish will be my main focus language throughout whole year. So if you're also interested in learning Spanish, or if you are learning Spanish and you think that we can motivate each other in some ways, please leave me a comment, because I'm kind of very curious who's learning Spanish this year. And now it's time for the fourth target language for this year, which is French. And for French, long story short, I've been learning French for about 6.5 years, but it was 15 years ago. And 15 years ago, I passed an exam in French in both written and spoken French. So you can probably see that my French was on a quite good level in terms of speaking, reading, comprehension, and listening. I would say that my listening, comprehension, and probably writing were the weakest skills that I had, and I wouldn't say that they were actually on a B2 level. I would say like they were more on B1 level. But definitely my reading skills and my speaking skills were at B2 level at that time. But it was 15 years ago. And for these 15 years, I didn't have any contact with French. And I wasn't interested in any contact with French. I didn't have any French friends. And basically, my French deteriorated so much that, similar to Spanish, I wasn't really able to speak in French at all. I'm still not really able to speak a lot in French, but I've started to regain some of my French abilities. And basically, to do a quick assessment of my French right now in comparison with my French 15 years ago, which was like from B1 to B2 level on different skills, as you've heard me say it before. For listening, I would say my listening skills in French right now are somewhere at A1 level or even below. So basically, when I'm trying to listen to some podcasts or video in French, I can understand something around like 10% or 20%. This is how much my French listening skills have deteriorated over years. And yes, I'm ashamed of it, but there's nothing I can do about wasting my time for these 15 years not learning French or not revising French, because it already passed. So the only thing that I can do is to try to revive my French and to regain my French abilities this year. And this is what I'm going to do. And of course, I'm kind of ambitious, so I would like to understand as much as I can and to be at as high level as possible. But for now, I think that regaining a B1 listening skills and maybe gaining a B2 listening skills would be good for me. And if I can achieve it until the end of the year, I will be good. For my reading skills, I think my reading skills in French are basically the strongest skills that I have in French, and I would say that now they are somewhere at B1 level. And I can understand quite a lot, but I basically can understand a lot of nouns, but I have problems with adjectives and verbs that I don't really recall or that I haven't ever learned, and that's why I cannot understand them. But basically, when I'm trying to read some kind of text, let's say in Wikipedia in French, I would understand maybe from 40 to 65, 70% depending on the text. So basically, I would say that my reading skills are somewhere at level B1. In terms of speaking, it's like almost unexisting. So basically, right now I'm trying to regain A1 level in terms of my speaking in French. And for writing, it's even more non-existing, so I won't even say about it. I don't really think I have to focus a lot on writing in French because for now I don't feel that need. Basically, I think that similar as with other languages this year, I would probably be mostly neglecting improving on my writing skills. So basically, my final goal for French for this year is to regain my previous abilities in French and to get to a strong B2 level in French. And if it doesn't happen, like life happens. So French is basically the language that I have the less motivation for in my language learning journey, and I think that a lot in this year will be about regaining this motivation for learning French, and I'm not sure if I will be able to succeed in it, but if I do, that's great, because maybe then I will decide to go on with learning French. But for now, like, regaining my previous abilities is okay for me, is enough for me, and that's all that I have to say about French.